Hi guys! In our preview of our social studies lesson, we're going to be covering the concept of slavery. The standard that goes along with this is Colonization to Independence 8.4. The practice of race-based slavery led to the forced migration of Africans to the American colonies. Their knowledge and traditions contributed to the development of these colonies in the United States. So we're going to be talking about how Africans were forced to come to the American colonies and how their knowledge and traditions contributed to the building of the colonies in the United States. So our learning target, I will be able to explain the issue of slavery from different viewpoints. Remember, our historical thinking is using all of those different points of view, those resources, primary and secondary, to form a clear picture of the events that happened. So our vocabulary, exploit. If you exploit someone, you use or manipulate someone in order to gain something, to have an advantage. You use this person. Bondage, the state of being under the control of another person. So the slaves were under control of their owners. They were in bondage. Race, a group of people identified as distinct from other groups because of supposed physical or genetic traits shared by the group. So different races, we have Caucasian, African American, Asian, these are different types of races. Abolish means to end or stop, make complete, end it. In this case, the North wanted to abolish slavery. They wanted it to end. They did not want it to continue. Oppression is prolonged, so it's a long period of time. Unjust treatment, so bad treatment, or control of people by others. So the slave owners were oppressing the slaves. Bonded labor. This is work that is forced, so they get tricked with unfair deals. So when the slave owners went over to Africa to try to get them to come over, they would promise them a better life. They would tell them that they would have all of these things. They would trick them into coming over and being slaves. So let's look at our primary sources. We're going to go over more in class, but this will get you thinking about the events and what the slaves endured, so you can get a clear picture of what these past events were. So our primary source, this is from a slave. I was born in Chickasaw County, Mississippi. Ellie Abbott and Maggie Abbott was our owners. They had 3 girls and 2 boys, Eddie and Johnny. We played together till I was grown. I loved them like if they was brothers. Papa and Moss Eli went to war together in a 2-horse, 2-top buggy. They both came back when they got through. Pa say they strope him down at the carriage house and give him 500 lashes. He say they have salt and black pepper mixed up in old bucket and put it all on flesh cut up with a rag tied on a stick mop. Alex Rogers was a nigger who to put it on the place they whooped. The Lord puts up with such wrongdoings and then he comes and rectifies it. He does that very way. So that was another primary source from a slave that experienced this event. And this is another point of view. May 19th, 1857. Today I bought my first slave. When I bought him, he kept screaming at me to buy his brother with him. I did not have enough money to do that, but I finally convinced the salesperson to sell me his brother for half the price. When I took them to my barn, they looked worried and frightened, just the way I like them. I told them every rule in specific detail. They looked bored while I was talking. I gave them the equipment and left them to be. Every time I look out the window, I get pissed that they are well behaved. I decided that every time I go out, I would grab my whip and whip them a few times in order to keep my firmness and prevent any thought of rebellion. So this primary source comes from a slave owner. This is a different viewpoint. One more viewpoint. This is another primary source that we can use to create this picture of these events. September 30th, 1865. Instead of killing my slaves before they left, I decided to let them work for me. I would pay them a small amount in which would not affect my profit and still keep them alive. I also allowed them to sleep in the barn and decorate it as if it was their new home. They happily agreed to stay and work with me. They did not have anywhere else to go. As their new manager, I decided to learn their names. The father was Bacco, which meant born first. The mother was Adana, which means father's daughter. Lastly, their son was called Akuni, which means joy fills our home. After a couple of days, I asked Bacco the name of his brother. He told me Tishweo, which meant the stabbed one. So these are some of the primary sources that we're going to be using to create a picture of what these events looked like. We can't travel back in time, so we have to use these sources in order to get a clear picture of what happened. We cannot just use one source and say that that's exactly what happened, because remember from our other preview, when you're focused on one part, you can miss out on a bunch of other parts. So we want to use a lot of points of view, a lot of perspectives in order to get a clear picture. Make sure you watch this as many times as you need to get ready for class. Have a great day.